Airbnbs will fall under the definition of homestays, because the Act includes homestays into what it refers to as tourism activities and services. Okay, so if you, under that Act, if you want to run any of those services that I have mentioned, hotel, guest house, inn, homestays, serviced apartments, serviced flats, then you need a license from the Tourism Regulatory Authority. The Act requires that once you are licensed, then you're supposed to keep a record of your guests in terms of their identity, their names, identities, basic address, and even country of origin. That Act also requires that you give this information to Tourism Authority if they ask for it. The second piece of legislation, of course, which is very famous, is the Penal Code. Penal Code creates what we call brothels, that any premises used for commercial sex under the Penal Code is defined as a brothel. So the Penal Code actually makes it an offense for any person to rent out their premises to be used as a brothel. So for example, if I have an apartment and I rent it out to a tenant, and the tenant in turn converts it to an Airbnb which is used for commercial sex, if it can be shown that I knew that my tenant has actually rented out or let out the premises for commercial sex, even me, the landlord, will be liable. So the third piece of legislation is what we call the Prevention of Tourism Act. That act makes it an offense for any landlord, tenant, occupier, or manager to allow a premises under their control to be used for tourism activities. Assume you let out your apartment to be used as an Airbnb, and it turns out that actually the persons who took it are terrorists. Then the question will be whether you as the landlord or the person who has let out that Airbnb has committed an offense under the Tourism Act. The third piece of legislation is the Private Securities Regulation Act. This was an act that was passed recently to regulate the conduct of private security companies and guards. So this one, largely the obligations are with the private security firms and the guards that they employ to guard apartments, flats, inns, guest houses, and of course where Airbnb business is being conducted. So that act requires the guards, and of course by extension the security firms, to keep a record of the guests that enter into those premises. The four pieces of legislation that I've addressed will fall under what we call the penal law, because they impose penal obligations. You can actually be sent to jail or fined. Then finally, we have now on the civil liability front, we have what we call the Occupiers Liability Act. Now, every time I tell my clients this, they begin to laugh. If you invite somebody into your premises and they get injured while staying at your premises, they can actually sue you. For example, if glass breaks and then they cut their hand or leg, even if they were your friends or relatives, they can decide to sue you because you are liable for their safety. And this also extends to the safety of the properties that they come with into the premises. So if they come with, say, an equipment that's expensive and it gets lost while staying at your premises, they can actually sue you under the civil jurisdiction for compensation. In terms of Airbnbs, this is critical because it then means that if you are hosting guests in your Airbnb and they get injured while staying there, then they can actually sue you under that act known as the Occupiers Liability Act.